it would be crazy to say, oh, just this person just pick up a guitar and now they can play guitar. Like, it doesn't work. Now, like you said, there can be a person that can they have really good ears for tone, and they can start to pick out notes and be like, oh, I recognize that song. That is a type of person. But like, they're gonna have to practice it. They're just not born with it, being able to play guitar. And it's the exact same thing with leadership. It is a skill you can definitely get better in, but you got to focus on it. That was all from the introduction, by the way. Getting into the part one of the book, which is the mindsets of a good leader. Chapter 1, every problem is a leadership problem. We roll right into Ramadi, Iraq, foot patrol, May of 2006. Go into the book. A massive torrent of enemy machine gun fire erupted from the west over my right shoulder. Dozens of bullets buzzed just above my head. Tracers ripped past me, their telltale orange hue still visible despite the daylight as they strafed the air. They forced me down and to my left in a prone position, flat on my stomach, putting the source of bullets directly behind me. Almost in unison, the same thing happened from the east, as tracer flashes and bullets cracked over the top of me from the opposite direction. With waves of bullets crisscrossing directly above and beside me, I was the meaty part of a crossfire sandwich. In an instant, I lost control of the situation, and I was no longer able to do anything. Because I had done nothing to that point, I was now exposed. Being the stellar Marine he was, Mo constantly mirrored my movements, so he was right there when I needed him, and the radios. Having followed my cues that day, Mo was now in the exact predicament I was, exposed in an open area, pinned to the ground, and unable to move. My inaction had put him in danger. Doc was already 30 feet ahead of me. He had pushed further up after the initial volley to get to a more advantageous and protected location. Now he was safe, positioned at behind a huge tree and kneeling in a small irrigation ditch that gave him cover from enemy fire. He was frantically gesturing and screaming for me to move to his position. The hell did you get your guys into?
Well, this is like the beginning of chapter 1, and it sets the theme for every chapter, which is maybe one of the hardest parts for me was to write this book. Was there are no like hero stories in this book. There's no story about me doing something right. And it was just forcing myself to look back on the things that I learned, the lessons I wanted to teach, and they all came from like really bad decisions. And you know, the precursor of this giant, I would call it a firefight, but I wasn't doing anything. I was just laying there. It was pretty brutal.
And by the way, I read an excerpt.
Yeah.
Like, get the book and you'll get the full story.
Totally. But the precursor to that was like a mortar attack. And you know this as well as I do. I mean, we do movement to contact, and like there was always a mortar attack. And I convinced myself that, you know, that mortar attack, which the mortars probably landed hundreds of meters away, which might as well have been miles away. It was just kind of almost in my mind meaningless. Is I had been presented a few minutes earlier in this situation that when we had taken this incoming fire, albeit like indirect and inaccurate, what I should have done was like, I don't know, basic leadership stuff, like called in the airplane, talked to the platoon leader, like done things. And what I did was nothing. And there's a bunch of detail about why I did nothing, but all of it was like, there's nothing I can do about this mortar attack, right? Like we always get mortared. So there's nothing to do. And so if there's nothing to do, you do nothing, which is the worst thing to do, which is a terrible thing. And here I am like doing nothing. And then that situation deteriorates. And by the time I come to the conclusion, like, oh, this is a really bad situation, I should do something, it's too late. I'm pinned down. There's more detail in that, obviously, but it was bad. In fact, I'm lucky to be here talking about it, how bad that situation was. And I just remember laying there just swelling with regret. Like, just asking myself, like, why didn't I do anything? And in retrospect, it's because I knew this was a problem I couldn't control. I was sure of it. So I didn't do anything. And that means the problem got infinitely worse, way more dangerous. And then I was not putting other people at risk. So the takeaway from that was like, dude, if you're dealt with a problem, lead your way through it. There's no guarantee that you're going to control every aspect of the outcome. That's not even the point. But doing nothing ended up being almost like costing me and a couple of people their lives. I'm lucky to be able to tell the story, and I wrote about it. But every problem is a leadership problem, and you got to lead your way through it if you want to be successful.
I had one of the elements in Ramadi was going out to like northern Ramadi and taking a rural presence patrol, and they were kind of showing me their route, and I said, hey, well, looks like you're gonna go across this big open area, and he's like, well, yeah, if we would try and skirt this, it would take a really long time and blah blah blah, and plus it's not that good a terrain, so we think the best thing to do is just go across this open area. And I said, okay. I said, yeah, you know what? I said, do me a favor. Like when you get to that open area, keep some guys in the tree line, and the other guys can maneuver across. That way, if they get contacted, you'll have guys. You'll be able to cover and move out of that situation. And sure enough, the exact thing happened. And sure enough, they had really good suppressive fire and were able to get the guys out of the middle of the field. But very similar thing. But that's the preemptive ownership, which you talk about in the book. For like, okay, wait a second. As a leader going into the situation, what can I control? Do I need to get every one of my guys in a exposed area right now? No, I don't actually have to do that. There's no rules. I can leave guys back over here. I can put some guys on this little berm, get a little high ground, be able to cover for their movement. Unless you just say, well, if we get mortared, because that group actually started with a mortar attack. Well, we're going to get mortared. There's nothing you can really do about it. Well, maybe there's a little bit you can do.
Yeah, there definitely is. And that story is like the first in the book. And it was a hurdle for me as I first started writing. And at some point I just kind of cleared the hurdle and like, all right, this is what it's going to be. It's just, I have to write a story about something I'm not proud of. I'm kind of embarrassed by. It was a huge mistake, but that's where I learned the lesson. Or to your point earlier, that's where that lesson really stuck in my, like, okay, that's when it really crystallized or solidified. And I had to recognize I was going to write a book that just tells a bunch of stories that I'm kind of an idiot and it sucks. But that's the moment that really, and from that moment on in my life, I can tell you, I reflect back on that constantly. When something happens, I don't make that mistake again. I lead. I don't always do the right thing. Yep. But I am able to recognize.
It's better than sucking mud.
Yeah. Well, so good times telling that story.
Give us a real quick 2-liner on how you got out of it. Okay, maybe a 12-liner.
Dude. So I'm laying on the ground. I'm looking at Mo, my radio operator. He's looking at me, and I go through like 50 different iterations of what I should do, and every one as I calculate, I'm like, you're gonna die. Can't put your head up. Can't move your arm. Like you could not move. And as the bullets are hitting in the dirt between us, you can feel, this, like you can feel bullets movement, like shifting around. Volume of fire, you can feel where it's going. It's going left, going right, going up, and it started to shift towards me. And I would say it probably got like 3 feet. I'm like, okay, this is it.